The PlayStation 2 was an easier, more accessible era for 3D video games. Yeah, too bad Capcom didn't get the memo.
Dinner is served, miss.
Here are the 8 hardest PlayStation 2 games published by Capcom, ranked. Number 9, Haunting Ground. Capcom is a formative survival horror studio, what with making Resident Evil and all. That series clearly became more action-based as it went along, but even in the first game, it ended with you firing a rocket launcher against a monster. So Haunting Grounds flips the concept. Players will take on the young, terrified girl Fiona, wandering around a creepy castle, completely unable, or maybe unwilling, from the creepy lurking beasts that just kinda smack her. Thankfully, Huey, a Sergeant Scruffy type, can attack back, freeing Fiona to wander into another obvious trap. It's the dramatic push and pull that makes Haunting Ground a classic for PlayStation 2 collectors, and an unknown for general audiences. It really is a good game, so if you're a fan of survival horror, give it a try, and try not to get so mad at Fiona. Oh my god, Fiona just shoved them! Number 7, Red Dead Revolver. No, you aren't experiencing the Mandela effect. Red Dead Revolver had a long and troubled development history when Capcom first conceived of this action western third-person shooter for the PlayStation 2. Several missing milestones later, and Rockstar Games, yeah, maybe you've heard of them, they made table tennis once, stepped in to finish the project and roll the series into one of the most sprawling historic natural sagas in all of video games with Red Dead Redemption. But man, you wouldn't know it with this first game, as it is corny and goofy with exploding dwarf clowns and acid bullets. Heck, it even has multiplayer deathmatch. This more or less feels like a Capcom game with some cheap player deaths strewn throughout the story. And yes, this first game is considered somewhat canon in Red Dead Redemption, although the actual events of this game are considered fictional in that world. Number 6, Beautiful Joe. Hence, you know, go-go, baby. Beautiful Joe was a very bright star that burned out quickly on the PlayStation 2. Attempting to bridge their 2D legacy with their powerhouse graphics, Capcom introduced the series with a sort of puzzle action platformer, lavish with movie-style special effects resembling the visuals of a chaotic film projector. See, Joe loves movies, but his girlfriend got stolen by a movie, so now he's got to go into the movie and save her, all the while using abilities like slow motion and fast forward, obviously. Except Beautiful Joe is a tough recommend for most players because of its occasionally obtuse difficulty with jokey solutions. Joe could have been something big, but the complex mechanics were too much for casual players. Number 5, Devil May Cry 3, Dante's Awakening. Look, most of the games on this list we're going to be a little critical of for slapping away potential new fans with unnecessary difficulty. DMC, on the other hand, was already an established franchise by the time Dante's Awakening rolled around, and it had a lot to prove after the abysmal Devil May Cry 2 turned the complex gameplay into a baby-level button masher and autoplay. Capcom needed to show its work, and boy did they ever, with an action 3D slasher some consider the very best in the series to this day. The game is absolutely going to push back against weak strategies, but truthfully, once you get over the learning curve, there are few other PlayStation 2 games that offer this level of expression. Number 4, Maximo, Ghosts to Glory. Man, see, this is what we were just talking about, Capcom. Maximo is a sort of spin-off to the classic and brutal Ghosts and Goblins on the NES and arcade. And true to that game, Maximo delivers all the pass-fail level design and enemy types one would expect of the 1980s, except now here in 3D. But that's the problem. We were at home, man. Maximo could have been a bigger hit. Maybe, had most players been able to enjoy it without losing every 20 seconds. It had great art design, the 3D models were very original, and it felt like a natural action-driven expansion of 3D platformers, sort of like what we saw with Crash Bandicoot on the PlayStation 1. Again, a truly great game that didn't seem to understand most players needed to be brought up to speed. What a shame. Number 3, Resident Evil Outbreak. Hideo Kojima once said he was jealous of this game, and you know when that happens, it means something weird's going on. Resident Evil Outbreak was the first attempt by Capcom to bring its survival horror series online, allowing players to take on characters with different skills and limitations to work together and escape Raccoon City and its many, many hungry zombies. So let's run that back. You don't have the usual attack powers, you've got to work with other players. Oh, and this is before voice chat. Yeah, you can already do the math, little Jaguar. This wasn't gonna work out. But it must be noted that fans have stayed to this game even to this day. Using many third-party resources, you can still play Resident Evil Outbreak today. And with the wonder of modern technology, you can even tell your teammates when you're being eaten by a monster. Wow. Number 2, Monster Hunter. So if all of you've learned of Monster Hunter over the past 20 years as Monster Hunter World, well, we won't judge you, but even in its most modern state, the series is a little unconventional. Players are expected to explore an area and prepare a strategy well before the hunt even begins. It's a complex game, and you really can't remove all of the esoteric nuances without getting rid of of some of the charm. Okay, so now flashback 20 years ago, and this is on the PlayStation 2, and they removed none of those nuances, making for a 3D game that could kind of be inferred, but true success required some sort of strategy guide. The Japanese, of course, said, yeah, that makes sense, and quickly snapped up the guides. Whereas the Americans, well, they didn't. And most didn't bother with Monster Hunter anyway. So much for Brady Games publishing a strategy guide. Number 1, Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter. Oh boy. You either had one of two reactions to this entry. Either you have never heard of it, or you've been arguing about it online for the past 2 decades. The Breath of Fire franchise was Capcom's answer to Dragon's Quest, and it did very well in its own right, attracting a small dedicated fan base of JRPG fans. Then Dragon Quarter happened, and that's a wrap on Breath of the Fire on consoles. Yeesh. It's certainly an interesting roguelike, complete with bait and trap mechanics you can use on enemies, but pretty much everything is leading to a game over. Every fight, every treasure, every step. Yeah, this game is counting every action you make, and if you don't finish the game before you hit 100%, you game over. This is intentional in its design, and you are meant to take that experience and apply it to a new playthrough. Most folks decided to not do that, and instead not play Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter at all. So, Capcom, any chance of a Breath of Fire collection? Promise we'll stop being mad about Dragon Quarter. And there you have it, the 8 hardest PS2 games published by Capcom, ranked. How you feeling? Better than the best? Have you been crushing hard games like they're nothing? Whoa, impressive. So why not stick around here in Game Rant and teach us your ways? And we'll see you soon.